Story 1. The events in this story took place when I was 15 years old. I had been at home watching movies. It was late at this point, but not super late, maybe 10 p.m. I live in quite a dangerous neighborhood. It is the typical nice neighborhood next to a complete disaster of a neighborhood scenario that I seem to see more and more of. A lot of the weed spots and other drug houses are all located not too far away from my house, and a lot of the crime from those places often spills into my neighborhood. I don't know why, maybe it is just me, but I can't watch movies without copious amounts of snacks. It just doesn't feel right, for whatever reason, and this night I was all out of snacks. The local stores were all shut. The only available place to go was a 24-hour service station, about a 15-minute walk away from my house. I set out as quickly as I could. I didn't want to leave it any later than it already was. When I was painfully close to the gas station, I crossed a quiet little street, and as I looked both ways, I saw a man wearing a hooded top, randomly stood in the middle of the street, staring in my direction. He didn't move an inch. He just stood his ground and stared back at me. He was literally in the middle of the street, where cars would pass. I gulped with fear and did my best to ignore the guy and keep walking. They tell you in situations like this not to walk so fast, as you will show them you're scared. But I walked fast as hell. I only really cared about getting away as fast as I could. At the next block, I turned around to see if I was being followed. The hooded man was still stood in the same exact spot, facing my direction. He hadn't moved at all. It looked as though he was trying to figure out where I was going to go next. When I got to around 50 meters from the gas station, I had a strange feeling in the pit of my stomach. I turned around to check behind me once more, to see that the hooded man was now sprinting down the street towards me. I tried not to panic, and I entered the gas station car park, hoping this guy would run past. As it was nighttime, the service station already had the window service running. I went up to the window and ordered some snacks. As the service station employee walked away to get my snacks, I felt a strong hand grab my shoulder and a voice in my ear that said, "Listen, you fat little fuck. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to run. Then, I'm coming for you." I could see the hooded man's reflection in the service station window behind me. In hindsight, I should have stayed at the service station, but that is hindsight, when your mind is far clearer. Fighting back tears, I took my snacks, and as I got to the edge of the car park, I took off running, homeward bound, as fast as I could. After a couple of blocks, I was completely gassed out, panting. I'm kind of fat, and I've never been a strong runner. I was relieved to see that I was not being followed. There was no sign of the man behind me. I continued on, trying to speed walk. Around 2 blocks later, I then saw the hooded man come out from the turning in front of me. He had ran down the other street, parallel to this one, so he could cut in and get ahead of me. I began panicking, and I did not feel safe at all. The man then began walking very quickly towards me and said, "Oi, fat boy, I know you bought drugs just now at King's Palace. Give me the drugs." I told him I had no drugs, and I was just buying snacks. "No," he said. "You have been doing drugs and have the munchies. Give me your fucking drugs." He then lifted up his shirt to show me a knife dangling down from his belt. I told him I was just a kid buying sweets, but he wasn't buying it at all. He told me that I had to come back with him to King's Palace, wherever the F that was, so they could confirm if I had been buying drugs or not. This was a nightmare. I just wanted to go home. I definitely didn't want to go to some random drug spot with a strange man who had a lethal weapon on him. He grabbed my arm and began walking me down the street. This was going to be it for me, I thought. There is no way out of this. We continued walking, and he told me that if I did anything funny, or tried anything at all, that he would cut me. I kept trying to plead with him. I was begging to go home, but he just ignored my pleas every time. We walked past various adults. They could all see I was being attacked, but nobody did anything to help me. We carried on walking. We were just about to turn off the main street, down a much quieter one. It was then that a night bus pulled up right next to us. "Don't even fucking think about it," he said. Instinctively, I pushed the guy away and jumped onto the bus and screamed for help. The bus driver shut the doors immediately and asked me what had happened. I looked back at the hooded man, stood on the curb. He was staring into the bus, waiting to see if I would be kicked off. I told the driver I was being attacked, and he drove away from the stop. I was so lucky. It was unreal. The bus driver was very kind. He actually drove me home after he finished his route, and he was very nice to me. I found out afterwards that the people that sell drugs will often send someone to rob their own customers for the drugs after they've just bought them. And I guess it must have been that. I made sure I always had plenty of snacks stored away for movie night after that incident. There was no way I was going out late for snacks again. Story 2. Me and my friend Frankie. We were thinking about starting our own YouTube channel. We wanted to keep it simple and do what was popular. We had decided to visit haunted and abandoned houses late at night because those videos rack up a lot of views and bring in a lot of YouTube revenue. It seemed like the perfect plan at the time. We even had the perfect house too, one that had been abandoned for as long as I could remember, about half a mile away from my house. We decided to go scope out the house late at night, the day before filming our video, to see what the house was like and to discuss how we could make the video better and plan the video. We arrived at the abandoned house at midnight. The house had boarded up windows, but it did have a front door. It was in a real bad state, terrible condition. What made this house even creepier is, it was the only house that hadn't been demolished on the block, and there was no working streetlights outside. We walked up to the door. To our amazement, it was not locked or even closed. The door was gently swaying in a semi-closed state. We slowly pushed the door open. The inside of the house was even more creepy than the outside. It was dark, damp, and had pieces of destroyed furniture laying around it. We walked around the house, inspecting it as we went through. We found some old sleeping bags, but there was no real sign of people being there. We walked up the stairs, and it was the same upstairs. Old destroyed furniture and sleeping bags scattered around. We were in the middle of talking about what we would film the following day for our first video, when we heard the front door slam shut downstairs. At first, we thought it was just the wind, but we then heard someone lock and then bolt the door shut. Someone was definitely in here with us, and they had locked the downstairs door. We put our hands over our mouths to not make any noise. There was an eerie silence, no noise whatsoever. Out of nowhere, we then heard someone sprint up the steps, with the wooden steps creaking behind their feet. And then silence again. We sat there in complete silence, too scared to move. Frankie then pointed to the window. He climbed out and hung as low as he could and jumped down. I was still inside the house. We were on the second floor, so it was not too high up. It was then my turn. As I climbed out the window and began hanging from the windowsill, I felt a hand tickle my hand and fingers. I lost my grip and fell onto my arse. I got up off the ground and we began running away from the house. I looked back, but I could not see anyone at the window. Just sheer darkness. We never ended up starting our YouTube channel after that, because there is no way I'm putting myself through that again, not for any money in the world. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to my content, and I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. Please leave a comment and a like, as it will go a very long way to supporting and helping my channel, more than you might think. And if you are new to this channel, subscribe for more real-life horror.